everybody, it's Kamal Fernandez from Kamal Fernandez Dog Training, continuing my series called Lifting All Ships. Lifting all ships comes from the premise that, the mantra, a rising tide lifts all ships, in the sense that in this current pandemic that is across the globe, everybody's finding it's somewhat challenging in their own way, whether it be social isolation, whether it's be the restrictions with their what they can and can't do, whether it's work, whether it's employment, etc. And I have started doing this series with people that I consider friends, peers, and I have an infinite amount of respect for, that I wanted to connect with and hopefully inject a level of positivity into the environment, or into the current climate. The person that I'm talking today is the ever so talented Jenny Gold, Crufts competitor, breeder of obedience champions, phenomenally talented, a clicker trainer who has achieved an infinite amount of success with her homebred German Shepherds, which is by nobody's standard as an incredibly amazing achievement. By anybody's standards. Also a really, really good friend who has been dragged into the 21st century of technology, kicking and screaming. So hence why I thought it would be really, really good to have this conversation with her and to find out how things are and how she's coping, etc. So, Jenny, how are you doing in this current climate? What have you been up to other than drinking gin and having the odd beer?
Drinking gin and beer, yeah. Some things are different. I, started with my goals for this year. We're ready to come out to ticket with Teo. We had a great Crufts, absolutely brilliant Crufts. I've waited a long time for him to mature. Went to Crufts, brilliant time, really thought the boys ready, and now we're faced with lockdown. And you can't keep a top performance dog at peak. You just can't keep them up there at peak. So he's been turned away, so to speak. He's just doing tricks, playing about, nothing serious. And at some point, obviously, I'll bring him back into work again when we have any idea whether the shows are going to start. So I had to change goals, which has been a hard one for me because I'm very goal driven. That's what keeps me motivated. So I'm lucky, got a youngster that I can start to bring on. So she would have been on the back burner a little bit, but now I can start to do more work with her. So there's a bonus there. It just means I'll change things around a little bit. That's all.
So for those that aren't aware, so just first if we go back a little bit. So Jenny was referencing she qualified her young dog Teo for Crufts this year. So Crufts was in March of this year, and it was his first Crufts, not Jenny's first Crufts, but the dog's first Crufts. And from a Crufts point of view, Crufts in itself was phenomenal for our sport, wasn't it? It was probably, I think, the judge Michelle Newman did an absolutely amazing job by all intents and purposes. I wasn't there, unfortunately, but everybody that attended, that watched it, that viewed it on the internet live, and competitors and peers and people that I was coaching absolutely sung its praises with the test, the level of detail put into it, and the whole the effort by the team, etc. So it was this high for the sport, as it were. Everybody was all buoyant, everybody was really uplifted about that. And then and obviously looking forward to the forthcoming season. Jenny wanted to obviously chase the 2 other tickets. I know I was bringing Girly out in ticket, but bam, out of nowhere we get thrown this curveball, which is out of everybody's hands, which is the most, in a lot of ways, frustrating. Oh, you've frozen. You're right. You've frozen there a minute. Okay,
no, still here.
Okay. It's been largely taken out of all of our hands, which is again, it's unfortunate, whichever way you want to talk it, however you want to frame it. And all of us have had to regroup and just, obviously try and make the best of the situation. So Jenny's talking about obviously the amount of work that goes into preparing a dog for Crufts. Just tell us a little bit about that, and just give us a little bit, for those people that don't know you, just give us a little bit of your background as well. So you're a professional dog trainer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you primarily teach.
I do half and half now, actually.
Okay.
I do half pet training and half competition training.
Yeah.
and I like the other breeds. I work a lot with the other breeds, having other breeds myself, non-collies.
Yeah.
We see, the sport is primarily geared for collies.
Yep.
And I love working a different breed in our sport. I
Yeah.
like the challenge.
Yeah.
So, so half of it is competitive obedience, that sort of thing, and the other half is my pet training at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and you and your other passion is your German Shepherds, which you've bred now for how long?
2005 was my
15
first.
years.
15 years.
15 years. So it's a line that you started from your original foundation bitch, which you've then. How many generations is it now, Jenny? 4?
5, I think,
5.
including her. 4 that I've bred.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's what we're about.
Yeah, so it's great. It's
great.
great.
And you've had how many dogs in? So Teo's gone to Crufts, Ava went to Crufts, Chica went to Crufts. So that's 3 generations of German Shepherds. So again, by anybody's standards, an incredible achievement. Not to mention Chica's litter mate, which Jenny again had 2 puppies at the same time, 2 litter mates, which again even crazy people wouldn't do. But Jenny made both of those dogs obedience champions.
I've done it twice.
Yeah, Ava and Dax. Sorry, yeah. So
Yeah.
but those 2 dogs in particular, Chica and Chance, both became obedience champions. So again, an incredible feat in itself. So obviously your dogs are a huge part of your passion, etc., and culminating in this high of taking Teo to Crufts. How did that whole experience at Crufts go for you? You said how much you enjoyed it, and what was it for you that made it so enjoyable, and what went into the prep, etc., just to give people an insight into the level of work that was put in preparation?
Okay. You need loads and loads of fitness work on the build up to it, because the hill work can go on easily 6-7 minutes of constant hill work. So especially for a big dog like Teo, he needs to be incredibly fit to be able to work and do his hill work keenly and nice and powerfully, how I like them to work. He has to be very fit to do it. So an awful lot of fitness work goes into my dogs on the build up to something like that. And not to mention the training side of things. So it's about keeping everything balanced so that I don't put an emphasis on any particular exercise before we go to Crufts. And so the build up is getting the dog at his peak, just in time for the competition. And that's not easy, because you've got to gauge it just right. You don't want them to go past, and you don't want them to be not quite prepared. So a lot of environmental work as well, because he's an environmental dog. He can be sensitive. So I had to do quite a lot of work taking him out and about. So lots and lots of build-up prep coming up to Crufts, which would all have been useful for me for the coming season anyway. So, he would have come straight off the Crufts and gone straight into the season. But it was a great Crufts. I didn't know how he would cope, being an environmentally sensitive dog.
Just before we move on to that, again, just some of the things that just to give people an idea of the level of work that went in. So just give us some people the things that you did with Teo in preparation to Crufts and the time before. So I suppose what I'm trying to articulate is, getting to Crufts is a huge achievement by anybody's standards, and the amount, I think people don't anticipate always, or sorry, I should say, understand the amount of work. And it's not just, it's beforehand, isn't it? It's like, as a breeder, as a hobbyist breeder, you're thinking about finding the right dog for your bitch, and the thought that goes in, and then picking the puppy, and the journey starts and so forth. It's all that. And then obviously you have good fortune, you win a ticket, you get them to Crufts, and then you have to prep for that event. So how long before Crufts does that normally start for you then?
For me, about 8 weeks.
8 weeks. And
so
then
at the end of the season finished,
yeah.
He had a couple of months off, don't do anything with him for a couple of months. Then I build it back up ready for Crufts. So about 8 weeks we start, and we just start pulling it back to basics to begin with. So just going through, the real easy bits of the exercises. Then we start to build in little bits of duration and so on, really. But there was also an awful lot of work taking him places like amusement arcades, so that we can deal with lots of unusual sounds that he wouldn't be used to. Anything like that, crowds and crowds of people. So for him, he wasn't a dog that I could just concentrate on the work element. He actually had to be exposed to unusual environmental situations. And he coped great. I was chuffed to bits with him. He coped absolutely brilliantly.
And I think, just to qualify, it's not because he is a fearful dog or that, but it's also a dog. He's a male German Shepherd. You have to consider, when you are working with other breeds of dogs, or certainly dogs that are more likely to be environmental. Something like Crufts is a lot. You're talking thousands and thousands of people, and thousands of dogs in close proximity. It's the extreme end of dog sport and dog shows. And the things that obviously the dogs have to be benched. That's not something that your dog may be used to. Your dog may have to be a crate for an extended period of time. That's not something that your dog may be used to. So I know, I was involved with Jenny's preparation quite a lot. She did things like having her crate in her living room, and had the dog in a canvas crate. He was obviously crate trained and has been from day one, but that was another little thing just to make it normalize it, wasn't it? And then she would do training days, and she would have the dog in a crate on a training day for maybe an hour or so, because that could be something that he may have to contend with at Crufts. And it's all those little details in the preparation.
We did Crufts days as well, where he went in, started off in the crate all day, and he's in the crate all day, coming out for a mini parade, coming out to work, going away again. So like mock stuff, really.
And try to.
When he got there, it was in some ways familiar to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a key takeaway for people listening is, irrespective of Crufts, for dog sports in general, there is so much that you can do to prepare your dogs that can hopefully help them. There is no guarantee, that the dog could have got there and had an absolute fallen apart, but preparation is absolutely vital, and the amount of preparation that goes into getting a dog to work hopefully is its best. And it's not even about the dog working at its best, it's about getting the dog to be the happiest and most content and comfortable. That's really the goal.
And the prep for Crufts is unlike the prep for any other show that we do.
So what would be the difference then, Jenny, just to go through that for people?
Environment for sure.
Definitely.
I mean, we can control the environment to a certain extent at a normal show. We can't control the environment at Crufts. So it's making sure your dog is able to cope with loud noises and tannoys and lights and clapping and cheering, all the stuff that we don't really get at a normal dog show. So and you never know whether your dog's going to cope with it or not. You don't really know until you first get there. But I have to say that I think a big part of going to Crufts and your dog being able to cope, certainly for me with my own, is their relationship with me. And the trust that they have in me. So if they're unsure, I want my dog to look to me for it, for support. So I think that's a big thing. So there's loads and loads of preparation that can be done, and I always go saying, I don't know how my dog's going to cope first time they go, but I want to know that I've prepared them as best I can, that nothing will be hopefully a major shock for them on the day.
And the other thing, and talk about preparation, and this is again I suppose going back a stage, is both Jenny and I as hobbyist breeders, we feel very passionately about the baseline factor that you should look for. Not only obviously health is a given, but temperament and soundness of mind are the pillars of what a good dog should be. So taking it back with Teo, really the thinking about preparing for an event like Crufts comes from even genetics, doesn't it? Like finding the dog that his father would obviously complement his mother in terms of temperament, breeding from a bitch that had a sound temperament. So hopefully when you come to an event like Crufts, you have a dog that within reason, because dogs are dogs, you believe that genetically has the temperament to cope with those things. And never mind Crufts, but it's just cope with life, isn't it, really? So you want a dog that is social, you want a dog with the working ability, absolutely, but also a dog with a great off switch that can be a family pet. Obviously Jenny husband isn't a dog trainer, but he's very, very passionate about the dogs. They are like their substitute kids. He walks them. They have to be dogs that he couldn't cope with the dog that was on the extreme end of the spectrum, could he? No.
I like to be to live with them.
I
like a dog calm in the house. I don't like a dog bouncing off the walls.
Well, except for Queenie.
All my dogs, that's all.
Except for Queenie.
Like you.
We're going to bend the rules with Queenie a little bit. Dave's back saying, come back, all is forgiven, get the Malinois. But
I like them calm at home. I don't like them bouncing. I don't like a dog that is constantly bugging me to do stuff all the time. So it's very much it. I like them to be able to switch off for sure.
And that's
be dogs really.
And that's a factor you would look for in a dog. From definitely. And we've talked like Jenny and I will geek out about breeding and our thoughts about breeding for hours on end. So it's something that I know that she's very, very passionate about, and the effort and the time and the energy that a good breeder should puts into the litter, finding the suitor, etc. is really, I mean, again, the search has started for prospective size for her young bitch, which will start literally years and years in advance.
Everything's planned years in advance.
Yeah, and I think that's...
As best you can, but you've got to be flexible. I mean, this situation that's just happened with the lockdown shows us how we've got to be flexible about our plans.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So you prepared for Crufts, you got to Crufts, and then you saw the round. How was that as a competitor? You must have been overjoyed. Yeah,
over the moon when I saw the round.
Yeah,
because it was a round for a big dog could do.
Yeah,
and our obedience, hill work, certainly the hill work particularly. Sometimes we can have rounds that aren't ideally suited for my dog because they might be really twisty and turny, and it's an awful lot of dog to get around. Sometimes a hill work round.
Yeah.
So I'm very fussy about the rounds that I would ask him to do. I like to be fair to him and his the size that he is. So I loved the round. It was just perfect for us. It enabled me to show what he was capable of without having to compromise him anywhere. It was just fantastic.
I think the key takeaway, and this isn't about saying Jenny's dog can't do a left turn per se, or it's about saying giving everybody as competitors a level playing field from the start off, and then what happens from there, it's down to lap of gods, and it's down to the dog, and it's down to training, it's down to the handler, etc. But I think the thing that really shone this year at Crufts was it gave everybody a fair crack of the whip to attempt the test with no... So, yes, I absolutely understand. I've worked a large Malinois, and there would be tests where, realistically, if the turns were in quick succession, I knew I was at a disadvantage if I was working my small Border Collie, for example. And I've had the advantage of working two types of dogs or different breeds of dogs to understand and feel passionate. Thriller was a small dog. She could turn in a sixpence. Strut, no way. He would need a lot more, just a moment to get himself prepared and me prepared.
And physically, they need to get back into themselves again before they have to collect up for the next turn.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you've got turn up, especially if they're multiple turns, and trying to turn a big dog, it doesn't mean they can't do it, but to turn a big dog on a double left about turn in normal pace, for example, is a lot harder. It's a hell of a lot of body to get around that turn. So no, it doesn't mean they can't do it, and it's certainly a lot easier for them at slow pace. But they can do it, but it's hard work for a dog to keep having to do multiple turns in, I should say, quick succession. And I think I try not to do it. It's hard for them.
Absolutely. And the other bit, if for dogs that are really small dogs, there is things that are going to be disadvantages. I think, for both Jenny and myself, we train. I have several various breeds of dogs, small, medium, large, etc. Jenny has larger dogs. A lot of us, we both coach. One of her students was on one of the teams with the Boston Terrier. I have a student that won at Crufts with a mini Schnauzer. So we understand the challenges faced by all breeds of dogs. And I think that what really, really shone out this year was that everybody could attempt it. It wouldn't have mattered if you turned up with a Chihuahua or a Great Dane, and you would have had a fair attempt.
Fair chance. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's all you ever ask. All you ever want is a fair chance.
Yeah.
And the rounds that I think, the little dogs struggle with long stretches.
Yeah.
It's much easier for our big dogs to hold position on a long stretch than it is the little dogs.
Yeah.
And I think the rounds where you get a mixture of really, really intricate bits and some lovely long stretches are the fairest rounds for everyone concerned. And Michelle did a great job at Crufts this year. Absolutely brilliant job.
So you went on that high, and you were all gun ho. How did we've had personal conversations about, as the shows have started to be cancelled, etc., and, planning our forthcoming season. And then you realise, actually, as this may not happen this year, how is that, and I think this is something that a lot of people can relate to. Has that made you feel as a competitor? And again, if you consider all the preparation that goes into, training a dog and even getting the dog from the off, if we take it back, and then all of that thought, and then bam, that choice has been taken out of your hand. How's that affected you personally, and how's it made you feel about things?
Well, you've got to look at the bigger picture and say there's more important things in the world right now.
Absolutely.
It really is. It's just another dog show, etc., etc. I've still got my dog. Not everybody still has their dog, and I've still got him. And the other thing is, he's hopefully still young enough that I can still achieve my goals with him. There'll be people out there with older dogs. This was their last season to achieve their goal. My breed don't have a very long working life, so I need to be I'm always consciously aware of it. They take a long time to mature, and then they don't have a very long amount of time at the top. But he's still young enough that, fingers crossed, we'll still have enough time. So I have to say, apart from the bigger picture, that there's more important things going on in the world at the moment. Yeah, of course it was gutting, because I felt he was ready for the first time in his life. He's been so slow to mature. I felt he was ready to go out, and, off the back of what we did at Crufts, even more so, both our confidence was up and high. Would have been a great time to go into it. So yes, I won't lie, I won't say I wasn't gutted that it's all been stopped. But there are more important things at the end of the day, and there are people out there who've lost more than myself, and are in a situation at the moment where they're like to lose more. Those were young dogs just in ticket. Be great time to have a year out, give the dogs a little bit more chance to grow on and come on in their work. For me, tough. First time I felt that he was actually ready to go on.
I think that,
there you go.
I think your feelings are, I think a lot of people will relate to that, in the sense of we can absolutely minimize the feeling that by being rational and saying there is people that are going through far worse than any of us, and missing a few dog shows, and people, close friends, losing dogs, etc., or older dogs, etc. There's all that to consider. Absolutely. But I think it's honest to say that there is a sense of disappointment, because I think a lot of us, we gear a lot of our training, our thinking, our social calendar, etc., around the forthcoming season and planning, etc. And it can take a minute to regroup and go, okay, well, how am I going to sustain my motivation, and to keep going, and to keep, again, you've got young dogs, I've got young dogs, so the natural thing is to go, okay, let me use this time to focus on them. The other thing is, for people that don't have other dogs, that this is there, is to go back and revisit some foundation, I think, and work on, like, for example, with I know you've been doing trick training with Teo, and going back again, working more on his fitness, keeping him fit, exploring different things in your training, teaching him new behaviours,
things that I wouldn't explore if we were in the middle of a show season.
So I think the takeaway is to make hay whilst the sun shines, and try to find things that you can do to keep yourself motivated. I know for me, and I'm sure for Jenny, our dog training is such a huge part of our life that I think if you sort of say, well, I'm not going to train the dogs, there's nothing to train for, I think that from a mental health point of view, I think that could take its toll, really. Because for me, certainly, I love training my dogs. It's, I love interacting with them, I love seeing the progress that they make, etc. So I think it's healthy to keep ticking them over and find other creative things to do, which brings us on to where you are as a professional dog trainer. So just give people a little bit of insight into your normal routine in terms of work. What would you normally be doing, and how would you connect with people?
Always face to face.
Yep.
Always face to face. The thought of going into anything remotely was scary as hell to me. It was just one of the things. No, I would never go there. Yep. So that's been quite a shock. So normally I run pet classes several times a week, several evenings a week. I do quite a few monthly training groups for my competition people, and I love the one-to-one interaction. I love to get a feel for the dog and the handler, and I can think of no better way than to be face-to-face with them. So for me, that's everything would be face-to-face. I wouldn't dream ever in a normal everyday life would I have ever gone to giving anything remote training wise a go.
And it's something that you've never wanted, is it? You've never wanted to do online training, you've never wanted a big social media presence, it's just not something that you very much consciously stepped away from, and if anything avoided. So what was the catalyst for, obviously other than the pandemic, just tell us a little bit about that thinking, and what really sort of forced your hand or made you think differently about things.
I had no choice, obviously. To I worry about leaving my pupils without any feedback. If they go off and start to fiddle on their own for months on end, I don't know what we're going to come back and have to deal with. And I know they probably feel some that they need the feedback. So first of all, it was about feeling some responsibility towards them. Forced me to say, okay, let's see if there's something else I can offer. So that was my starting point. And when I watched one of your very early things that you did like this with Cat Farrants, and obviously I know Cat very well as well. And it was something on there. I know both of you, you know, you're really advanced isn't the right word, but you're very good at doing all your technology stuff. And I've always looked and gone, oh no, I don't want to go there. But when I think one of you, I think it might have been Kat, who said, just dip your toes in the water. You don't have to go whole hog. Just do whatever you feel comfortable with. So I started to think, I wonder. So obviously I rang you first of all and said, just how hard is it? I need it really, really simple. I have people say, oh, you want to try this and this and this, and I'm like, no, I can't do any of that. I don't, you know, it scared me, the thought of jumping into it big time. So it had to be very, very much simplified for me to even consider dipping my toes in the water. But the interview you did with Kat made me sit and think, okay, let's just start. Let's start somewhere basic and move from there, really. So, so that's how we started.
So it's interesting because I've had lots of really, really positive feedback about the Lifting All Ships series. And when I spoke to Jenny and asked her to do this, initial thing was, no, which is a bit I'm not doing it. I'm throwing my teddies out the pram. I'm going to flounce my skirt. I'm picking my toys up and I'm going home. No, I'm not doing it. No, I'm not doing it. So after, and that was Jenny's response of when when we discussed about, well, how about doing some online training? No, I'm not doing that. Yada yada. So everything starts with the conversation of no, and then she sort of has this tone of voice that says no, I'm not doing it. I'm gonna have a tantrum, and then she meanders off, and then she starts to think, well, if I could just do this little tiny thing, and then anyway, so it grows. But it's interesting that saying how things work, isn't it? You know, that my intention for Lifting All Ships was to give people, one, to uplift people, and to give them some ideas and feedback about online training. Certainly when this first happened, I think everybody was in a blind panic of, how am I going to sustain myself? How am I going to not only to be callous, to still make an income that can get me through this tough time, this really surreal moment, but to also, as you have said, I know I feel a great sense of responsibility to my students, because, some of them I literally see like every single week, and even beyond that, they come to my weekly groups, they come to my monthly groups, they come to me privately. I have a deep sense of responsibility because not only am I immersed in their dog training, I'm immersed in the other stuff behind the scenes that goes on with them, and you have that interpersonal relationship. So again, same as you. That's definitely a motivator to be able to help them, and I think that's was the original intention of Lifting All Ships, to give people that are gonna, again, in that uncomfortable situation of it not being something that you've done before, of now being really forced into having to do it, and I think that one of the messages that when I was first contemplating about doing online training, I was very conscious of not being. I didn't want to be disingenuous, and I didn't want to be, cheesy marketing, and I didn't want to be like, pushing hard sales, because that's just not my ethos of way in which I operate. And it was really speaking to a very good friend of mine, Linda Orton Hill, actually, that said to me very simply, find the why, and the why of which you are doing it, which will give you the incentive and motivation for doing it, for all things, really. And I think that was a really articulate point that you just said. The why for you was not, there was necessity in it, but also that sense of responsibility to your students and I think that those of us that coach with passion feel that responsibility to us. I mean, I literally have sleepless nights over some of my students, I was talking to two in America about the Pasanis. I absolutely love them to death. They're fantastic people. How I literally have sleepless nights about their two dogs and their problems that they're going through. About, oh my God, how are we going to fix this problem now? Honestly, it's the bane of my life.
When they phone you in the depths of despair, you have to help them. You have to be, you have to help them emotionally as well. So
because I think that's the thing about when you coach, it isn't just about teaching them how to train a left turn. It's about the other stuff. I've had a bad day, I've got this going on it personally, and then my dogs are almost an escapism for a lot of them, and I think that's a fair thing. So I think the role of the coach goes beyond definitely just teaching skills. So again, I think that was something that Jenny needs to really tap into, which really made her go, okay, do you know what, I can do this and I will do it. So just tell us a little bit about your experience about the technology and what you found as somebody that's, to be blunt, a technophobe. What did you find was easiest and most comfortable to work with?
Yeah, definitely a technophobe.
Yeah.
And also, my reputation is that I break everything going. So anything that I touch breaks.
Yeah.
So not only do I not know my way around how to work these things, but the odds of them actually surviving enough to do stuff is also pretty tough. So I found, to begin with, Messenger.
Mm-hmm.
So Facebook Messenger video calling was the easiest for
Mm-hmm.
me,
Mm-hmm.
because I had done bits of that before. You'd forced me down that route a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I have done little bits of that, and that was the best one. Somebody mentioned Zoom to me at the very beginning, and I was like, oh no, couldn't possibly go there. But actually, I have gone there, and I found Zoom okay. I've done lots of practice doing family get-togethers online, virtual get-togethers on Zoom. That's been a great way of me honing my skills, so it's not all about dog training. So getting used to doing Zoom, and just things like if I was doing a little video to demo anything, the classics. I've made all the mistakes, and there will be more to come. Where I've bent down to get a treat, and all you can see in the camera is my bum. So I'm not aware of which way to bend to pick up a treat that's on the floor, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I've made loads and loads of mistakes. There will be loads more mistakes coming, but started with Messenger, and then I have moved on to Zoom. So it's been all right, actually. I was pleasantly surprised.
I think once you get over that initial fear, it's actually quite a fun process. You can have real giggles over it. And like you say, when you're posting your videos and you see, God almighty, what the hell am I wearing? Or why am I wearing those Jesus Creeper slippers and those bloody white socks in my pyjamas training my dogs? But
Always training in my pyjamas.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But you sort of, you know what, you get over it, because when you from a dog training point of view, you're going to glean so much from videoing. I'm a massive one for videoing training. I think it's absolutely critical for moving forward and when you train your own. However, from an online point, yes, there is things that that there is things to do when you're doing it from a professional sentence point of view. There's definitely things that you need to be mindful of. However, I think the thing that people gravitate to is when you are genuine in what you do. Again, don't try and be something that you're not. Again, let people know that, oh, you know what, I'm learning this as you go, and get comfortable with it. I think some great things is to play around with your family with it. So, just do calls, especially at this time. As I did a video about the various platforms that you can use. Again, Facebook Messenger, super easy for one-to-one stuff. Zoom is great for classes or multiple users, really efficient. There's lots you can do with it, because that's essentially what it's built for. So just two simple ways of which you can familiarize yourself and be comfortable is just to use it on a more regular basis. I think this time has made everybody become more familiar with it, but from a teaching point of view, those of you that are out there listening and contemplating it, start to first familiarize it. Just call a friend and natter away to them on Zoom, or arrange a meeting between a friend, or with go into another room and Zoom call your partner downstairs. It doesn't really matter, but just familiarize yourself so that it isn't the unknown, as it were. Yeah.
And it's people become very self-conscious. Looking at themselves on screen. They don't like looking at themselves on screen. And I think certainly I've done a lot more videoing of my own sessions in the last couple of years. And you get over that. You do get over worrying about, oh my God, my bum looks big, or look at my hair is sticking out, and, oh, look at where I'm walking. There's so many more things to be gained from videoing and looking back at it. And ultimately, to begin with, you do only concentrate on those things, but you get over it, and then you start to glean so much information when you look back on video. It is unbelievable.
Or sometimes you look at it, Jen, and you think, oh gosh, my hair looks fabulous today, doesn't it? So I get that often. I don't even see the dog. I just think, gosh, my hair looks fabulous. But anyway, nonetheless. But so I think that the takeaway is, to just start playing around with it and be familiarizing yourself with it in a way that you can develop your confidence, because that's really what it boils down to. So how has it been going? What have you been doing online with and how has it been working out with your students?
I first of all did some groups of 3, and we used Zoom because we had the group. And that was okay. It had its limitations, and one of the limitations that I found was whoever speaks is the one that it brings that person to the fore. So that made it quite difficult in terms of flicking from one person to another.
You can change that, Jenny. You know that.
Sorry?
You can change that setting.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Yes, you can,
Yeah.
can't you?
Yeah.
And you can just you can pin the video.
Sorry?
You can pin the video, can't you?
No, you can do gallery view where you can see everybody at the same time.
Oh no, I had that.
Okay.
I had that.
Okay.
But you can't see them well enough. So I
Yeah.
find I was sitting like really close to the camera and shouting at the camera all the way through.
Yeah.
So it's just not natural for me to see people on a screen. So and I'm sure I need glasses. I'm sure I need to get some glasses.
Yeah.
So I think that was quite difficult. So but it went okay, and I was pleasantly surprised. And of course, normally working, I can put myself to the angle that is best for me to see what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And the difficulty when you're working with somebody else is they have to keep moving themselves so that you can see something. So you have to keep saying, sorry, can you move? Whereas normally I would move so that I could watch what was happening.
Yeah.
Attention to detail, I didn't expect to see much of that at all. And actually I was surprised I could see more than I thought I would be able to. We had quite a giggle doing it, to be fair, in groups. Quite a laugh. People couldn't get their audio working and that sort of thing. So that was fine. But now I've gone to one-to-one stuff, and I'm going to use Messenger. So we're just dipping into that at the moment. Starting that this week is my one-to-ones on Messenger. So I think there are some advantages and disadvantages of both, and I'm literally have just dipped my toes in the water that the whole thing's still evolving, and I'm still finding out the best way to go really with all of it.
And at the moment, you're largely offering this to your current students, aren't you? You're being a bit cautious about. So over time, I'm trying to persuade Jenny to open up the floodgates, so to speak, because she's such a talented trainer and talented instructor. And I've said to her for years, I've said do stuff, but she's obviously been kicking and screaming about it. But again, it's just a confidence thing, and being respectful of that. I Jenny's just offering it to the students that she currently trains anyway, so that she has that interpersonal relationship, and then once hopefully her confidence grows, she may consider offering up and again, she said no. So with Jenny's pattern of behaviour, no normally then leads to a yes. This when I asked Jenny to do this initial video call, it was no, and then it's happened. So I'm fingers crossed she may offer her talents to other people. So that's great. So a couple of great things that you've brought up is the platform. So Messenger and Zoom are great. I've already discussed that. Again, a nice little thing that you can do on, if you have I'm sure you can do it on other computers, which is great. So if you're doing a one-to-one, this is a little tip for people, is I did it the other day. If I'm doing a one-to-one and I want to catch a moment, I can press a button which allows me to capture a photo of the session. So I can do I can then feed back. So if I'm working on something with somebody, I can take a photo and send that to them via Messenger, etc., so they can see what I'm working on. The other thing that you can do is record the screen. There's several ways in which you can do that. Which then allows you can record the screen, create a little video clip, and send it to them and feedback, etc.
I've managed to do that. Managed to record it.
Zoom also allows you to screen share, so I can share my screen, and they can share their screen with you, or vice versa. So that, for example, if there's a video and I want to demonstrate something, and I want to do a video, send the show, I can do that as well on Zoom, which is great. So there's another little thing. The alternative is, and again, keeping these things basic. If you are out there and you are considering online training, or to try and connect with your students, stick to the basics, like doing a video via WhatsApp, and that you can review it and you can feedback via conversation, email, etc. That's a great way to do it. The other thing is, there's great apps there. Coach's Eye is one of my favorites, where you can zoom in, you can circle things. There's loads of great little tools within Coach's Eye, and you can also do an audio over it. So I've done that in the past with students, where they've sent me videos, I've reviewed it, I've sort of zoomed into the hand position, I've circled things, I've then slowed movement down and sped, etc., so that it's really, really detailed for feedback. So that's because, again, it's specifically done for coaches. So that's another little way to connect with your students. Certainly for those of us that do sports, it's great to have these technologies at your disposal. So a couple of ideas there. So in regards to what are you doing with your dogs? Because again, another thing that Jenny's been very no, I'm never doing it, is training in her living room. So how has that changed, and what have you been doing?
I became a little obsessed about it.
That's not like you to be obsessed, Jenny.
Once I discovered I could do it, I became a little obsessed about it. my puppy's probably very grateful she's now in season and she's going to get a little bit of time off.
Yeah.
No, it's been brilliant. I've always said, no, I haven't got enough room in my house. And I've made room and I've started videoing, hence the pyjamas and stuff like that. And yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised how much you can do in a small area.
Yeah.
So, I've struggled with trying to get out and do, obviously we can't get out and go out often and go to all the usual places to do our training, which is where I would do my, my movement with big dogs. You can't do movement within the house. But there's been loads and loads of stuff that I played around with at home that I probably wouldn't have played around with this early on, and it's forced me to go that way. So actually that's going to be really, really interesting to see if some of the more stationary type stuff like distance control, stays, retrieves of different articles, all the basic stuff that you really don't need much room for, lots of static work. It'll be interesting to see how that fits into my new training with the puppy, because it's coming in probably a lot earlier, some of those things a lot earlier than would normally have done. So yeah, great. It's good. It's a new way of doing things, and I like to see what comes from that, really.
Yeah, and I think this is a great time to do it again, to do training indoors if you're limited in space, or in your garden again if you're limited in space. I'm very lucky. I have my training area, my training room, which is great. Again, there is limitations to what I can do. I can certainly do a lot, but there is limitations. And it's about being creative, and again, doing trick training, teaching your dog some silly tricks, just again to keep them and you interested, and to keep you motivated and keep them stimulated, to be honest, especially Queenie's young, she's quite busy, and it's great to use that grey matter in a productive manner, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And it's things that I wouldn't normally spend the time on, actually. So I'm sure it's going to give me a better, more well-rounded competition dog, actually. And I've been doing a lot more, out on our walks, bits and pieces, where I'll do some working trial stuff, which, I've dabbled in working trials in the past and I've absolutely loved it. So I've used some of those things, because we're out on rough terrain where I couldn't do my obedience work. So it's been great to do some more trialsy type stuff. So that's reignited my passion for trials as well. So all good things to come from it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great message, and that be productive in your use of time. Embrace that this is the unknown, but that doesn't mean it has to be negative. You can there is great things to come from it. Again, technology, the advantage we have is technology in a lot of ways, because it allows us to connect with people that we may not have previously prior to having such ready access to technology. Also, from a dog training point of view, being creative and innovative in what you can teach them, and also going back to basics. And I think it doesn't matter the skill level or the experience of the dog, always going back to, even if we didn't have these restrictions, you would constantly be revisiting foundation with any dog, wouldn't you?
In an ideal world. And there are things that I know I will take from this when we're allowed to go back out again. So I've had to change my goals, I've had to change my mindset on some stuff, but I think it will bring a lot of good things in that I will retain for future. And certainly the use of being able to see some of my students that I would only see monthly, I'm seeing them currently at the moment weekly, and brilliant. I think that can be nothing but good for them. So I think even when I can go back to my favoured, face-to-face training, I still think I'll retain some of this, and I it's another string to my bow that I never thought I would want to use, and I think it will have uses. And yes, I might just step out a little bit and do something from other parts of the country. I've had loads and loads of messages over the last few years asking me, are you doing any courses up near me? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I like to stay down here and do them, and and it's going to give me a way of being able to do some of that at some point.
Yeah, and also across the world. Now you've had, a couple of students from abroad, so that's amazing that you've had that connection and just reaching a wider group of people. So that's fantastic. Jenny, as always, such a good giggle talking to you. Always good banter, always good laugh. Thank you very, very much for your time, your insight, and your positivity. I wish you all the best with your dogs, obviously, and I'm sure I'll speak to you later on. All right, no worries. Love you and leave you. Take care, Jenny. Bye.